But who's this?
Sammy, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Michael, Miami. How you doing?
Michael in Miami. How you doing?
Been a while, I know. Been kind of tied up doing this, that, and the other. By the way, I did try calling twice before. It's very weird.
Yeah,
But,
I don't know. I mean, I saw you there, but I could not hear you.
Not a problem. I know you're running up against time, so I'll just let you know. You know, obviously Randy started down here,
Yep.
and she actually holds you in very high regard, extremely high regard, likes you a lot. And it's been suggested, and I think you were, you know, obviously on the vanguard of this, trying to get off terrestrial radio and taking the message elsewhere. It has to be done that way. It has to be done. But look, she started off as a DJ doing rock and roll stuff, okay?
Yep.
And she's self-taught. Many ways, like you were a guy who wasn't naturally politically inclined. You didn't go to journalism school. You didn't work as a technical journalist inside a newspaper or a television station. But you were self-taught, and you have a passion and a desire to learn, and she has the same thing. Now, you come about it from different angles, but,
Yep.
you know, it's still refreshing to hear your points of view, and believe me, even though she kind of leads with her heart a little bit too much, but I think she always wanted to try to do the right thing. So,
Oh, yeah,
I
no.
know, like I said, I know she holds you in very high regard. And I
look,
think you guys saw each other in Seattle a couple of months ago.
Yeah, I mean, Randy has always been very good to me, and you know, she was, you know, really the only radio person. I mean, there was a couple other people, but nobody, not in terms of not in terms of hosting at Air America, particularly when we launched. And you know, I've always been a big fan of hers, and you know, it's depressing to me because it really does signal that I think, like, sort of terrestrial radio, there's no future there for a show like this. I mean, which is not to say, you know, we get replayed on AM Talk, and there may be one or two community FM stations out there, but it's not. It really is just not even part of the model in any way. And you know, I can understand from Randy's perspective not wanting to relaunch in this format because it's, you know, it's a
grind. It's not easy.
It's a
very
grind.
hard. You know, I mean,
there's a lot less resources.
We hear you all the time, and you know, you're building something from the ground up. I will say this, you know, having done so, having established your credibility, having done your homework. I mean, okay, so you're friends with Hayes, and you're friends with some of those people, but dude, you're not. By the way, congrats on the MSNBC contribution title. I mean, this is as a direct result of having done the homework and built the foundation that gives you credibility in that community. And you have to learn to go along to get along. And I don't think she ever did, but that's neither here nor there. It's just a shame that has to go away. You know, in a way, though, if everything from a progressive standpoint goes through the internet, now it's almost a version of, not quite like net neutrality, but if you can't reach the masses through terrestrial radio, that means only those who have computers or smartphones and that kind of stuff. And I realize the market expands with each and every day, but you're still fighting from behind in terms of reaching the mass populace, aren't you?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I mean, well, first off, like, I'm not convinced that in 20 years there's going to be many mechanisms to reach that way. I mean, there was a story actually I saw today which showed that 50% of television viewership is actually done by 20% of the people. So in other words, what's happening is that people are basically, they're choosing their medium and they're consuming a lot of it. And I think, you know, people dip in, but I think that's the trend. And, you know, the big game changer is going to be, in my estimation, is when there is internet real connectivity built into your cars. And I think that's going to be, you know, there's still a market for this stuff, and people are still going to be looking for it, and it's just going to be a way of reaching people. But your point about the nature of talk radio is going to change. I mean, it's very much a populist medium, and I think to a certain extent, frankly, that's why it was so difficult in some respects to get establishment backing for what we were doing at Air America, because it's very much a populist medium. And there is an inherent concern, I think fear, amongst a lot of wealthy people on the left about populism, because left-wing populism is about money. And that also combined with the lack of sexiness. You know, the reality is that on radio, particularly like, you know, when we were doing the Majority Report on the first the first version of Air America, you know, when we were on WLIB in New York, and when we were on KTLK in LA, and when we were on in Seattle and Portland and Chicago and in Miami, and when we were on, I mean, I think at our peak on the Majority Report, there were some shows that were up to, you know, I think Franken had about 100 affiliates. But when we were even at like 50 affiliates, based on the ratings that we were getting, we were, on any given day, you know, people consume radio slightly different than they do TV, but we had bigger audiences than anything on MSNBC. I mean, anything. And that, it's still, and the only reason why we got the media coverage that we got, frankly, was because of Al Franken and Janine. You know,
and later Rachel. I mean, but you know what?
No, not Rachel. Rachel.
No,
Rachel.
Later. I said later Rachel.
Oh, yes. But Rachel would not have ever been, you know, all of that was a function. And you know, this is where I disagree a little bit with Randi and her assessment of what Franken did. I mean, I think Franken went into it thinking, I may or may not run for Senate. But he has a genuine interest in politics, and he had a genuine interest in broadcasting. And I think that had he gotten a poll that first time he took a poll, and it came back that he had not a very good chance of being a senator, I think he would have stayed with radio.
Well, even more of a fight. If Paul Wellstone hadn't died, I don't think he would have run. I mean, he was very close. He was very close to Wellstone. For those who don't know, I mean, he was the senator that died in a plane crash, and Walter Mondale tried to run against Norm Coleman, lost, and that seat became somewhat of a sore spot because Al, being a native Minnesotan, wanted to be able to get that seat back in what he considered the rightful column.
But I'm talking specifically about Air America.
Anything else.
And when he left Air America,
I don't think he used Air America as a pad. I mean, that's where I disagree with her too. She takes things personally, and she thinks that it's somehow directed at her. It's what I have to tell my clients all the time. It's not always about you. It's about the process. And sometimes it's hard to confuse you from the process because they're talking about you or it affects you, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you were the reason something did or didn't happen. Sometimes
and I got to say this. Look, the fact is that when Al Franken left, had there been a decent management, even decent management, and I think there were like 2 or 3 different ownerships after Al Franken left. Had one of them been even remotely competent, Air America would be doing very well right now because it could have easily transitioned a lot of its revenue to come from, because at one point I was the web editor-in-chief. I knew exactly what the streaming numbers were. I knew exactly
tell people the story about when Lionel came in to replace you in the mornings, how ridiculous that was.
Well, that was ridiculous.
How much of a civil war that cost.
Yeah, but I mean, that was one of many blunders that Mark Green made. But I even think after that the network could have survived. I mean, had there been even a modicum of competency anywhere, in the upper or even middle management, I think Air America would have been doing very well today. Because I know how much money was left on the table in terms of podcasts. I know how much their streaming numbers were doing at that time. And the conversion to a system where the radio functions as a marketing vehicle for the main revenue driver of online would have been very easy, frankly. And
well, that's why when people talk about the evening news broadcast being, somehow disembodied and not being influential, folks, people who watch 15 minutes of Brian Williams still triple, 4, 5, 6, 10, 20 times larger than the Fox News hour at its height. It's not even close.
Right.
So you're talking about a very small, influential portion of the electorate, which is, somehow outsized its usefulness and overstates its relevance.
And let me tell you something. Let me tell you what they understand at MSNBC. What Phil Griffin understands at MSNBC. from a business standpoint. If you want to reach liberals and activists, liberal activists in this country, there is only one place that you can go to advertise. So it almost, is not to say that the ratings are irrelevant. The ratings have certainly dropped off since the Olbermann days, and that's a function of a lot of different things. But the bottom line is, if the value of reaching those people who are still sort of like the thought leaders and the activist leaders on the left, or the liberal, or liberal establishment, whatever you want to call it, is still, from a dollar-to-dollar standpoint, still very important. And this is something that the management of Air America and none of the radio people, frankly, who were involved there. I mean, Randi decries the lack of radio people there. No, the only, decrying of radio people, the only problem that we had there was, I think, ultimately with, well, I shouldn't say the only problem. One of the problems we had was with the radio people, because the radio people were coming from a dying business. They had no idea. And the reason why their business is dying is because they had no idea how to transition. What we lacked there was some entrepreneurs who understood just basic, fundamentals of it. We should have had a cable executive, frankly.
Well, there's the other thing you have to remember, and her mentor down here was a radio god by the name of Neil Rogers, who is legendary for having basically revolutionized the way AM radio was listened to down here, and she learned from his knee. But the one thing he always used to say before he was forced to retire and eventually passed away, but the one thing he was always important to say, this is about your show, it's about, by the way, the guys are doing a great job when you're not there, but this is also true of a lot of other political shows. They have to be entertaining. You have to entertain people. I don't mean you have to tell jokes, but you have to be interesting.
But you know what? Listen, no, see, I don't think...
take yourself... Wait, hold on. You cannot take yourself so seriously so that you lose your audience if you are in a communications medium. You must be able to be entertaining. I listen to Sam Seder because he's smart, he's funny, and he's engaging. That's the difference. We hate Limbaugh because he's essentially become a parody of himself. But he initially was a very, and probably still is, a very good broadcaster.
Oh, definitely. But Michael, we're talking about two different things here. Okay?
Right.
I'm not talking about the content. The content was never an issue at Air America. It just simply wasn't. I saw the ratings. I mean, at one point it started, everything started falling apart. Okay? But the content was not the issue. The issue was, how do you monetize this in a business that has very low margins, that has a bar to entry because you've got such a huge sort of like an existing domination in that marketplace, and in a business that was contracting, that has low margins, very low margins, just in success, very low margins, but is contracting because of technological advances. Forget the content for a moment. We're not even talking about content. The content is secondary to this conversation, because the content was always there. I'm always taking it for a given. There was not a content problem at Air America. The problem at Air America was there were morons who were offshoots from the radio industry, an industry where you'd go in, you knew how to sell three types of advertising. It was either to Spanish sports or right wing, and you had your normal set of direct mailers and then some corporates. I mean, the advertising model was so staid that you could not bring somebody in there who knew how to sell advertising, and they had no idea where they needed to go with this stuff at all. I mean, the audience was there. Look, Janine and I were beating Levin, Ingram, and Savage in New York.
Right.
All right?
I lived in Los Angeles at that time when you were on at night. I know you guys kicked tail. KTLK was very strong back then.
But they weren't making money off it. They didn't know how to make money off it. They didn't know how to make money.
I know you got to go, but in the end, you have to present, and this is the end, I guess, for Randy's situation, you can't take yourself so seriously. You're not going to win every battle. You're not going to win every argument. And in the end, if you choose a medium that has to be out there, it has to be entertaining to the masses. Now, in your situation, you had some poor management
Michael, I got to jump.
I got to jump.
Call back, though.
Have a good one. Take care.
All right, bye-bye. Thanks for calling.